This video was brought to you by Brilliant, and the first 200 people to use the link below will get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Since Russia invaded Ukraine in late February, NATO membership has become a hot topic of conversation. Despite boasting 30 current members, several EU countries have opted against signing up, including Finland, Sweden, and the Republic of Ireland. We've already made some videos on these countries possibly joining, which are linked down below, but in today's video we're going to take a look at another European exception, Austria, and do our best to explain why Austria has never joined the alliance, and the likelihood of them joining in the near future. Firstly, it's necessary to run through a bit of Austrian history. After the Second World War, Austria was under joint occupation of the Western Allies and the Soviet Union until 1955. The Soviet Union occupied the territory in the east, and the United States, Britain, and France in the west. However, in April 1955, the then Chancellor flew to Moscow and negotiated the end of the occupation of Austria under a political agreement called the Moscow Memorandum. In return for the withdrawal of Soviet and Western forces, Austria would become a neutral and non-aligned nation. And that's exactly what happened. On the 25th of October 1955, the last Allied troops left Austrian soil. And just a day later, the country's parliament enacted the Declaration of Neutrality, committing Austria to perpetual neutrality and preventing the country from joining military alliances going forward. Then, during the Cold War, Austria saw itself playing a special role as a Cold War neutral state. The country played a crucial role as a mediator and bridge builder between the East and the West. Vienna was even the location of a number of important summit meetings and long-running arms control conferences, as well as the third host of important UN agencies such as the International Atomic Energy Agency. However, after the Cold War, Austria's international position changed dramatically as it pivoted towards the West. In 1995, Austria joined the European Union and later adopted the euro in 1999. And in terms of security, in 1995, Austria also joined NATO's Partnership for Peace program, promoting bilateral cooperation between themselves and NATO. Then in 1999, it joined NATO's Euro-Atlantic Partnership Council, a forum for dialogue and consultation on political and security-related issues in the Euro-Atlantic region. Nonetheless, while Austria might have more explicit political alliances with the West, it maintained relatively cozy relations with Russia too, at least until recently. In fact, Austria was the only major EU country not to expel Russian diplomats in the course of the retaliatory measures undertaken by the West in the aftermath of the poisoning case in Salisbury in March 2018. And the governing coalition in office from 2017 until 2019 had conspicuously friendly relations with Putin. In fact, in 2018, the then Chancellor and Putin had a meeting on average every 3 months, with Austria being the first foreign country that Putin visited officially following his re-election. And Austria's foreign minister at the time even invited Putin to her wedding. In fact, the Kurz government only fell after a secretly filmed video showed their vice-chancellor and leader of the FPO seeming to accept an offer of financing from a woman pretending to be the niece of a Russian oligarch. So it's safe to say that Austria has had close ties with Russia all the way up to the modern day. Nonetheless though, Austria has changed tack somewhat since Putin's invasion. And that's in part because the pro-Russian FPO have been replaced by the OVP. In fact, when it comes to the war in Ukraine, Austria says that it's militarily but not politically neutral. And this time, Austria has gone along with the rest of Europe when it comes to sanctions, and Austrian airspace is now closed to Russian aircraft. Austria has also contributed to the non-lethal EU funding aiding Ukrainian forces, including supplying helmets, medical equipment, blood, and fuel. And in response, just last month, Putin duly declared Austria an enemy of the country, marking a new low for Russo-Austrian relations. So, with this newfound hawkishness on the rise, what are the chances of Austria actually joining NATO today? Well, it still looks very unlikely for the foreseeable future, for two main reasons. The first of which is public opinion. Neutrality is deeply embedded in the Austrian psyche, and most Austrians are still wary of explicit military alliances. A poll conducted in March 2022 found that 76% of people favoured Austria remaining neutral, versus just 18% who supported them joining NATO. This is partly because, as a landlocked country surrounded by imposing mountains and other NATO countries, Austria just doesn't feel threatened in the same way that the Finns and Swedes apparently do. The second reason, though, is the Austrian constitution, and that's because the Declaration of Neutrality is enshrined in the constitution. So repealing it would require a 2/3 majority in parliament, which doesn't currently exist. Austrian politicians might also be wary that NATO accession would put them under political pressure to increase spending on their military, at least a bit closer to NATO's 2% target. And that's a big ask, because since it declared neutrality in 1955, Austrian military operations have been limited to peacekeeping missions in the Golan Heights, Lebanon, and the Balkans. And as such, defense spending currently amounts to just 0.74% of GDP. While the government currently plans to raise this number to 1%, it would still be well short of the 2% target set for NATO members, let alone the 2.5% that military analysts believe would be required if they want to build up their military to the point where they could actually defend themselves in the event of an invasion. And that's because Austria's armed forces are currently little more than a natural disaster response unit. All in all then, it looks very unlikely that Austria will join NATO anytime soon, with neutrality being a deeply ingrained part of the Austrian identity going all the way back to 1955. Nonetheless, with fellow EU members Sweden and Finland now very much on the path to NATO accession, there'll certainly be a renewed interest in the potential for Austrian membership. And some Austrians argue that its long-standing neutrality only makes sense due to the specific and historical circumstances of the Cold War, and that now, more than ever, is time to change that stance. And to be fair, NATO membership does have some supporters in Austria, in particular on the centre-right, and their position has been invigorated by Russia's war against Ukraine. Andreas Kroll, the grandee of the Conservative People's Party and its presidential candidate in 2016, argued in a recent op-ed that the Ukrainian case showed how a neutral or non-aligned state stands alone when attacked, and that Austria will eventually have to choose between NATO membership or cooperation with an EU army. Either way though, it seems that Austria is taking this question more seriously than it has in decades. Brilliant is an online STEM learning platform that teaches you everything you need to know to better understand the modern world. Baffled by investment and finance? Well, they've got courses on maths and quantitative finance. Confused by coding? Well, they've got everything from the very basics right through to quantum computing. Unclear why you're losing millions? Well, there's no guarantee that Brilliant can help with that, but they do have courses on cryptocurrency and gambling. You get the point. Everything you want to learn about STEM is covered by Brilliant. And the best thing is that all of their courses are designed by award-winning instructors and built upon the principle of active learning. So you're gaining STEM knowledge by actually doing it. So if you want to improve with STEM, then you can sign up to Brilliant at brilliant.org/TLDR EU. And the first 200 people to do so will get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thanks for supporting the channel.